Hello YouTube, Horse14T here, and today we are going to do our third tutorial on working with NIFs. And this one is advanced coding by doing loads. Now, if you don't know what a load is a lower poly version of the model that will load in when you're far away or zoomed out in the game that the game loads to save on processing and helps with performance and all that. And so right now I am using an Okapi model that I've made. This one's going to be the female, and because in the game currently, the current female Okapi has very distinctive horns, and that would be okay if it were a male. But female okapis don't develop horns the same way the male does. They do have little horn bumps, but they don't have fully fledged horns like the male does. So that's why I made this, where I made the horns much smaller as little bumps. And I also did some Uving, which if you don't know what that is, that's basically just going in here and just miffing about with the texture, with how the model is laid down on the texture, which took a little while to get a result I was somewhat happy with. But anyway, right now we're not looking at a load, we're looking at the main model. The main model here is the highest poly model, which if you don't know what a poly is, it's all these little triangles that are all over the body. Yeah, so this is the high-res model. This is the model you see all close up. It's all pretty. Now if I click on this eye here, well, now we get to see all these other ones. And I'll click on the first load, which is this one. So I'm changing the flag here to 4. And now we have it. And then I'll change the main model to 5 to make it invisible. And now we have a load here. And it has a much smaller poly count than the main model, as you can already tell. Like, it's more square, and the horns and face are less detailed. And so yeah, that's how a game uses loads to save on processing and computing power. But I didn't want to do any of that, so that undid it. Yes, it did. So now we have this. This is just the export I made from Blender. And what we're going to do is, well, first we're going to need to prepare the model. So I'm going to do everything I did in the first tutorial that I did, but it's going to be a little different here. So I see the main body here is called Edible Mesh. I can't speak today, so I'm going to just do this and edit. This will just help me for when I transfer it to the parent NIF here, because unlike the first tutorial, I do not want to delete everything in here, at least not yet, because I'm going to need to use all the stuff for this, especially since it's not a unique model and it's just a small edit of the head. So what we're going to do is I can ignore these properties. I don't need to do anything with those. The only thing I have to mess with is the tri-shape data. which from the first tutorial you can just fill out all the same, and there we go. So that's all done. And I have to repeat that with all the loads as well. So if I click on the eye here, now the Okapi in this case has 2 loads, and this one I'll rename as edit 2, because this is the second one. Typically, when you export loads from Blender, when you actually want them, they'll come in these little groups here, so you can find them relatively easy from that. And instead of 22, I'm going to write 23 in the flags, because that's the flag used to make it invisible. If you make it 22 as well, it'll be on top of the actual model you want to show all the time, just like this, basically. And you don't want that. You want to keep it invisible and only have it appear when you zoomed out a certain distance. So that's why it's labeled at 23, and you do this for both loads. So 23. They both need to be 23. In this case I have 2, but theoretically you can have as many loads as you like. You just need to do the coding for it. So yeah, the main mesh, which is the part that you want actually visible, should always be 22, and then the loads should always be 23. Alright, so I'm going to just fill out the tri-shape data on here. And you'll notice that the Okapi here doesn't have blinking. We'll get into the blinking part shortly, because I want to do that before I do the transfer this time. And if you want to know what I'm doing and everything, if you want more detail on this, go look at the first tutorial. That's where I go in depth with all of this. There we go. So now we're done with all that. We don't need to worry about properties again. So we can save this. And I forgot to rename this edit. Alright, now we save. Now I'm going to close this and the parent NIF. And I'm going to open it up in NIFscope 1.1.3, and I'm going to add the blinking texture. This will take some time, so I'm just going to speed it up until I'm done, since we already did all the blinking stuff in the part 2 of this tutorial series, so I'm just going to speed run this. Okay, we're back. Now I have the blinking done on the main model here, but the thing is with the loads, you must do the blinking on the loads as well. If you don't, you'll get a blinking bug when you zoom out in the game and the animal starts blinking black. And we don't want that. So in this case, I'm going to set the edible mesh to 23 and make it disappear for a moment. And then I'm going to find load 1 here, and then 22. And now I'm going to repeat the blinking process on here as well. So just like in the original tutorial for blinking, you just need to duplicate the coordinate set and make sure that the decal texture is set to 1 and that the base texture is set to 0, which in this case it seems to have done that automatically, which is nice. So yeah, I'll just fast forward through this and then I'll catch up back with you once I'm done. Alright, I'm finished the first load, and now I'm going to make it invisible again and work on the third load. Now the third load, which typically looks really low poly like this, the eye texture is actually the easiest to do on here, because as you can see we don't have the little eye overlay on here, so we just repeat our steps. Boink. And there we go. And all we have to do is just scale it to 0, move it to the corner, and that's it. We're ready to move on. So now we're ready to save as, override, yes, and close this, go back to the final, and of course, fix everything that needs to be fixed. So 23 and 22. There we go. File, save. And now we want to fix this. We don't need it to be all of the folders and everything. We just need it to be the actual texture name. Now, Zoo Tycoon 2 is case sensitive, so it is important to make sure that your main texture file, in this case okapi.mdds, matches in here, otherwise you're going to have problems. Enter. And for the checker blank, it doesn't have any capitals, so I could just delete all the path text, and then it's ready to go. Now you see that the I disappeared. That's simply because I don't have it in the Okapi folder. I just got it from the zebra folder instead. So now we want to save. And now we're ready for the hard part, and that's the transfer. So right now I'm going to go find my main model here. I'm going to right click, block, copy branch, and then I'm going to open the main parent if. And I'm not going to go into scene root. As you can see here, the scene root's a bit different compared to the first tutorial, and that's because loads are involved in this one. So what I like to do is I go to load 0, because that's what the main model is. It's the load 0. And then load 1 is the middle load. And then load 2 is the last load the game will load if you're all the way zoomed out or super far away. So what I want to go do here is I want to go to the load 0 9 node. And I just want to click on this num_children number here. And in this case, there's only one model transfer. So I'm going to go 2, enter, refresh. And now we have this plus button here. I'm going to right click on that, block, paste branch. So now we have our edited model on top of the original, or rather below it. So we want to fix that. And the reason why I put the edit in the name was so I can tell it apart from all of the other loads here, all the other meshes, which makes it easier so I don't get disorientated. Obviously, depending on your animal, you can just name it. In this case, Okapi adult F 0 0 And that would be it. But in this case, I'm not going to do that. So now what we want to do is we want to go back to the main mesh of the old one that we want to get rid of, but we don't want to get rid of it yet. And I'm going to look at the properties and rememorize the numbers. In this case, 115 and 112. Now we're going to go to our pasted mesh, and we want to copy that. So 115, let me make it disappear for a bit, and then 112. And so now it's partnered to the original texture property. Again, this is only because this is a model edit and not a completely new model. You may skip this if you want, if you have your own texture things that you want to use instead of the original models. But in this case, I want to use the original model. So, and we notice that on the original model here, it has a couple of extra data lists, and that'll be effect enabled, which is always just directly below the mesh tri-shape. And in this case, I want to keep them, so I'm going to memorize again 110, 111, and then go to my edit here, give it 2 extra data lists, refresh, open the little drop down menu with the little arrow here, and then I'm going to go 110 and 111 and do the little circles. So now this texturing property and this material are completely useless to me, so I'm going to right click, block, remove branch on the texturing property. So that's right click, block, remove branch, and that'll get rid of all that. And then the same thing with the unused material, remove branch. So now we're only left with our edited model and the tri-shape data and the skin data. And you want to keep all of this because all this is important, because if you screw it up, it'll make your model go all wonky. Like say I did it for here, mesh. So in this case, 6 is what, if I did that here, you'll get that, and we don't want that, so I'm going to undo that. So now, for my purposes, I want to reorder our new edited mesh to where the 0 mesh is. Now fortunately, it's pretty low on the list, so that's going to be pretty easy to do. So I'm just going to click on, left click on our editable mesh, and I'm going to go Control, and then use the up arrow to move it. And I'm going to have to remember that the tri-shape data here is what I want to move as well. All of these I want to move as well, and leave the old ones behind. So I'm just going to move it up to here, and then I'm going to find where the tri-shape data for the old one is. So it's right there, right under the material. I'm going to move my edited tri-shape data all the way up. I can hold down the up button or down button to make things faster, or I can just click it individually. Don't know if the mic is picking that up or not. If it is, I'm sorry. And for the skin instance, in this case it's all the way up at 6, 7, and 8. So I'm going to have to take it and hold down the up arrow all the way to 6, 7, and 8. This, depending on how big your block list is, this can sometimes take a bit of time. So you have to be fairly patient. in order to do this. This is just the way I do it. You don't have to do it. You can just, if you don't care about order, you could just leave all your new model stuff at the bottom and it doesn't matter. But in this case, I want to keep the order the way it is for the game. So I'm going to do that. So now, as we noticed, we have not deleted the load controller. And that's because this is very important to keep. Do not delete the load controller like you do in the first tutorial. And what we want to do is we want to transfer our new model to the load controller. And otherwise it won't work, and I believe your game will crash if you don't do this step properly. So we're going to expand the shape group here, and since this is the first load, chances are it's the top shape group 1 here, and then we just open these menus until we get this. Okay, so which mesh is this on? This is the 0 mesh, so double check because sometimes it can be a bit wonky. So our new mesh is labeled at 113, so we're going to go back to the load controller and change the 12 to 113. Enter. And then we're going to change the skin instance to our new skin instance, which is now 6, since we moved the old one from 6 to 9. So it has to be this, and it has to be the one connected to your new model. So if you forget where you put it, or you're kind of disorientated, you can just click on your new model, and you can click on this little blue arrow and it'll bring you to it, and then you can change it in the load controller. And refresh. Now the second part that you need to do in this case is that you need to open shape groups 2, and you'll see that there are all the shape groups on the model in here. Depending on how many meshes you have, this can be long or short. In this case it's short because there's only 3 models here. And we want to change the one that we're working on, in case 112 is the old model here. And so we want to change that to 113, enter. And sometimes the old model will disappear. That's perfectly normal. Don't worry about it. And so we refresh all of that. And then we go back to the old model. And now we're ready to delete it. Now in this case, I want to keep the effects and stuff. So I want to strip it of all the stuff that our new mesh is partnered to, so that we don't accidentally delete it. It disappeared and that's fine. Leave the trash shape data and skin instance where it is, because we want to delete that along with the model, because those are not being used anymore and it just takes up extra space. So your thing should look like this, all empty. The model disappeared and everything except for the trash shape data and skin instance. So now we want to right click, block, remove branch. And now it's gone completely, and it's been replaced by our new mesh, which we can now take the edit off because now it's replaced. And there we go. And we just repeat that same process with, I forgot to make it so it's not read-only. So if you save and you still have this little star up here will indicate that you have unsaved changes. If that doesn't go away, that means you forgot to do the properties read-only thing, which I did. So now we can click save, and now that star's gone. So that means it's all saved and that we don't have to worry about losing our progress. So now we're going to do the next load, and load 1 here. We're going to block, copy branch, And then we're going to do the same thing. Go back to scene root, find load 1. So again, click the blue arrows to immediately go there. And 2, enter. And you'll notice that I didn't bother getting rid of the 2 here. That's because when we saved, it automatically got rid of it. So if I were to do that here, save, it automatically gets rid of the empty thing. But we want it right now. So block, paste branch, and then we just repeat the steps. So we want, so the properties, chances are, will be the same as the main mesh that you'll see, and in this case it is. So 12 and 15. And then your pasted mesh will always be at the bottom. So that's helpful to remember. So 12, 1, 15, and then refresh. And then the num datas. Now these will always be different because each mesh has its own different data. So 120 and 121 in this case. 120, 121, and there we go. And now we can delete all of these, remove branch, remove branch. The reason why I use remove branch is just to make sure all the extra stuff is gone. With the material you can just click block remove, but I like to be on the safe side. If you do mess up, you cannot undo a delete, so if you mess up, you have to do it all over again, or revert to your previous save. You can also, if you mess up, you could just go to your mesh, and you can just go block, remove branch. Make sure all these are blank, of course, so you don't accidentally delete any of the stuff you want to keep. And just remove all of it and start over again. So now we want to move it to where load 1 is, which thankfully is not very high on the list. Sometimes it can be all the way at the top and it can be a bit time consuming to deal with. But in this case, it is nice and it's on the bottom here, so we don't have to worry about that. And there we go. And remember 120 and 124. Go to the load controller and we can collapse all that and click on the middle one. Sometimes it will highlight like this. That's perfectly normal. That just happens. 120 and I believe it was 124. Yep. And then 120. Then refresh. In my experience, you don't really need to click on these green arrows, but it's good to be on the safe side, especially when you don't want to do things over again. I'm going to save. And then we go to load 1. And then we delete all of the stuff we don't want. And in this case, I made it white. That's fine. I'll go editable mesh, block, remove branch. And now that one's gone, and our new load has taken its place. And then we just rinse and repeat for the final load. In this case, I need to zoom in to click on it. There we go. Copy branch. And then unload 2 here, since it's conveniently right there. 2. Refresh. Block. paste branch, 112, 115, 2. And for this one, I'm going to demonstrate what happens what you can do if you accidentally delete something you want to keep. In this case, I want to keep the infect enabled. And, yeah. 30, there we go. And then 135, block, remove branch, 135, and 137. So I'm going a bit out of order now. That's perfectly fine. You can do this however you want. 135, 137, and then the old one was 128, 135. That's nice, computer, thank you. And if you're feeling unsure if you did everything right, you can always click on the blue arrows to make sure you did everything right. So now I'm going to reorder, as I like to do. In this case, I don't need to move all of this because all of this will be deleted anyway. So what I'm going to do here with the old one is I'm going to show what happens if, say, you forget to remove the extra data list here, and you accidentally delete the model, remove branch, and you forget, oh no, the effect enabled is gone now. What can you do? Fortunately, this is a very easy thing to fix. You could just click on this, right click, block, copy, and then go back to your edit and go to the little plus button, block, paste, and there you have it. And you just repeat that with enabled as well, copy, block, paste, and there we go. It's all fixed. It's not relying on the mesh or anything, so just be careful not to put it in the controller. I'm pretty sure it'll give you a warning if you try. No, it doesn't. Move. I thought it did, but it did not. So now we are all finished and ready for game testing. So file, save, and that's it. Your animal is loaded and it's ready to go. Again, if you have any questions, always feel free to put it in the comments or message me wherever you find me. And that's it. And I'll see y'all later.